Working Families Teamsters 1932.org.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCAA Radio.com website and nbrradio.us. We got to bless the show before we get started. Let's go. When I was in my mother's womb, I had a calling on my life to do something in the glory of God and marry it like a wife. Commit myself to his word and never be led astray. And when it's all over, when he comes, I'll be glad to see that day in the morning time.
Get ready for an epic collaboration as MB Radio and Patriot Radio join forces. These veteran-owned stations are uniting to bring you top-notch, veteran-run podcasts, along with your favorite classic rock music 24/7. Stay tuned for the ultimate radio experience that celebrates our heroes and plays the tunes that never get old. From engaging discussions to timeless hits, this partnership has everything you need for your listening pleasure. Don't miss out on this exciting new chapter in radio history as MB Radio and Patriot Radio come together to rock your world.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at nbradio.us.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCAA Radio.com website, the station that leaves no listener behind, plus nbrradio.us. So make sure you go download both the station apps, either KCA Radio and or nbrradio.us, and you can catch the show on your device wherever you are. If you're in the Inland Empire and you're driving around and you got to get out of your vehicle and you listen to us on the radio, grab your smartphone, your device, type in kcaradio.com, and you can listen to us from your smartphone while you're in the shore stopping or wherever, shopping or wherever you got to go. All right, today's episode is going to be very, very important to me because as we've been taking care of this minority mental health subject, and we went from the Black community, we went from the Latin descent community, we went from the white descent community, and now tonight we're going to go and talk from the Asian descent community. And this allows us, again, for us as people to just realize that we're not different. You know, we might talk different, we might say we're different, but if you look at us as we're human beings first, we're spiritual beings first, actually, if you believe that, but we're human beings, right? And the relatedness is so important. And as a veteran, I was trained, I was taught, instilled that civilians don't understand me. I was taught that early in my career that civilians don't understand us. Well, guess what? I don't understand Farron either. So how about that? So how about we try not to understand one another and we start to relate to one another? And if you could relate to me, that could actually further our conversation, because what would you do in situations like this, given these kind of circumstances and these kind of backgrounds? Use your imagination. How would you respond? How would you react? Right? And if you do that and you allow yourself to do that, guess what happens? We can start to connect with one another on levels that we don't even realize that we can. Right? The only thing that separates us is our language on how we say I, who I am versus who you are. And another way we talk about that is we label one another. We teach it as objectification. I was taught to objectify another human being to a terrorist and then kill terrorists. But guess what? One day my brain is going to realize that that wasn't a terrorist, it was a human being. Right? And we do this in the United States. We do this all over the world. We do this in conversations because we need that. We need that skill. It's also a survival skill. We need to understand, you know, how we label and talk to people or how we describe things in life. But when it comes up against objectifying another human being is where it disconnects us from that human connection and you become an other. but for some that it's about that. And when you start talking about that and talking from that, it hinders us as people. So I'm going to play our public service announcement from Comigo, and then we'll get right into today's topics on the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also stream from the KCAA Radio.com website and all the NBR radio platforms.
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Comigo. Comigo is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes. In moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Comigo decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Comigo.com to learn how you can get Comigo through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh, man, that shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. You know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait, there's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait, 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man. There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org. All right, again, welcome back to the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM, and streaming on nbrradio.us. Let's see. Tonight, again, is going to be important because we're having these conversations around minority mental health. And I have 3 gentlemen that are going to share who they are and their experience around how important this conversation is. So I'm going to go to Andy first, who is streaming from Canada, right?
I am. But, I
appreciate you for hanging out with me so late, man.
That's right. I appreciate the invite. I remember it's been 4 years since I did a podcast with you. It was great.
I actually watched that this morning.
Yeah, it was eye revealing because when you were asking questions and hearing my son say things to me that he didn't say to me, he was saying to you, but it's like I never realized that what kind of impact I had on him. So it was I appreciate you.
Great. I appreciate you too. Again, tonight is important. This is Minority Mental Health And, you know, I just want you to introduce yourself to the listeners, first of all, and then we'll go ahead.
Sure. So my name's Andy Chan. I'm of Chinese descent. When it comes to mental health from the Chinese community, it's not really something that's talked about a lot. I grew up in Canada. I sort of had the double whammy. Not only was I Chinese in Canada, I was Chinese in Canada in a small white town. So I was never Canadian enough for Canadians, and amongst the Chinese community, I was never Chinese enough. Like literally, there's a phrase that they call us. It's called "juk sing," which roughly translated in English is a banana, yellow on the outside, white on the inside.
No way.
Yeah. So the real screwed up part is that the actual real translation is even worse than that. They're basically calling you like bamboo. You appear real on the outside, but on the inside you're hollow. You don't exist. You're like air because you're not.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and on top of that, like just the whole culture of the Chinese just don't have time to even think about their mental health because of the way that the Chinese first came into North America. I mean, like the Chinese head tax, like the Chinese head tax in Canada, U.S. is the only ethnicity and nation that has ever been prevented, well, not prevented, a huge barrier put on top of you to get into the country. No other ethnicity has had that happen to them. And for the listeners, look up the Chinese head tax, and it's incredible how that has impacted the way that the Chinese have grown up in North America. So the generation that came afterwards, like there's essentially a whole lost generation of Chinese who were not allowed to bring their wives and family from overseas. So like that whole generation is lost. And then each generation that came, they suffer their own feelings of being inadequate, whether it was because they came over and like the whole idea of why Chinese are called yellow isn't because we're actually yellow. It's because we were suffering from scurvy coming over. So when you suffer from scurvy, your skin goes yellow. So that's how Chinese originally became yellow, even though we're not actually. You look at my skin; it's not yellow by any means.
Yeah. Let's make this personal. Again, I appreciate you for saying what you shared so far, because that is something that, again, people need to understand, that a lot of our ancestors came here from other countries, right, to the United States for a better life, for a better opportunity for their future generations. And if we tell the truth, that was accomplished by our ancestors. I mean, look at where we are today, right? We're communicating, we're able to talk to one another. And for me, we talk about it being, it's our turn. Like, what are we going to do with this now that and able to move this conversation forward? But I want to ask you, growing up in that environment for you, how was that, being called those different names? Like, how did you deal with that as a young child?
It was kind of interesting because being called chink by white people didn't hurt me as much as being called juk sing by Chinese. It was mentally draining because I remember when I became a teenager and I tried to go to Toronto and find Chinese to spend time with or whatever else, and I was treated as an outcast. It was painful because I was like, wait, I thought I found my people, but they're rejecting me. That was really mentally draining. And even though I grew up in an all-white town, I mean, there's 22 Asians in the whole town of about 9,000. I mean, that's how distinct it was. I remember. But even though I grew up in a white community, like therapy wasn't really something that was really readily available. Culturally, even though I was in an all-white community, my mom was still very Asian mentality. The only time that we ended up doing therapy, quite honestly, was because she was trying to have family harmony between her husband and myself, because she remarried, and her husband is white. Because up until that point in time, like when things were happening, from a combination of cultural, where Chinese just don't go therapy, like talking about mental disease or mental illness or mental issues at all, is seen as like as taboo. totally taboo.
You know, one of the things that we teach, is that sense of belonging, right? That connectedness and that we seek from human beings, from other people.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel with your peers? Like, because at some point, you're going to turn to your peers for love and acceptance and that sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
How did you manage that, if at all?
I honestly just decided, you know what? If no one's going to accept me, I'll do my own thing. It was tough.
Yeah.
I mean, for years, it wasn't until I was in my 30s that all of a sudden the Asian community accepted me. Wow. And I mean, that's a long time to not be accepted. So I mean, it was tough. And the thing I learned is earlier on, before I came on, and you're talking about how to survive, right? How you're taught how to survive. For the longest time, I was in survival mode. I've literally been in survival mode almost all my life, and up until recently, when and I'll talk about that in detail some other time. But I met this wonderful lady, and so my first wife gone out of the picture. That's been 4.5 years. I mean, that's when you first met me, actually. Exactly. Literally just afterwards.
Yeah.
And but I met this wonderful lady. Her name's Nicole, and she's helping me to change my mindset. And in a way, we're helping each other, because for the longest time, all we did was survive, and now it's time to thrive, because survival is not enough. We want to thrive, and the way I thrived when I got rejected by fellow Chinese who I thought would understand me.
Exactly.
I really just focus on what can I do for myself. What can I do to love myself, and what can I do to accomplish some goals? And the saddest part that I discovered about the Chinese community, you don't matter to them until you accomplish something. If you have no success, you're nobody. And it's tough, because to not be loved just for being you, to only be accepted when you've accomplished something, that's something that it's kind of like, I don't know. But that's
the culture, though, right? Would you say that's the type of culture that comes from? Because I've heard and from the different backgrounds that a lot of times the parents put so much pressure on that child, right? Because they want your life to turn out. So they put that much pressure on you of what kind of job you need to have, what kind of lifestyle you need to have, all this stuff. What do you want to say to that before I let you go?
So the biggest thing is that it's really strange. The Chinese parents will really push you to succeed, right? But when you do succeed, they downplay it. They act like it's no big deal, and it can leave an emotional scar that lasts forever. I mean, like 30 years ago, I was the number 1, and so this is a club actually still exists in the U.S. It's called Distributive Educational Clubs of America, and they had a Canadian chapter. Actually, I have a few Canadian chapters. I was number 1 in my category, Canada-wide. I called my mom. I'm all excited. And I'm telling her, like, hey, look, mom, look how well I did. Guess what her response was? Let me ask you, what would your parents' response be if you were like number 1 in your state?
They would be like, wow, congratulations, like celebrating, like they'd be going nuts for sure. My mom.
No. Chinese culture, my mom. Oh, that's nice. Don't get too big-headed.
Now, would it be safe to say that is that coming from a place of love? Like my mom would say something like that in some about myself. One thing I could say about my mom that we just resolved this was, it was hard for me to say I did this, I accomplished this, because she said it feels like you're bragging or you're boasting with, and people won't accept you that way because you're bragging about yourself. But I'm like, at some point you have to have a level of self-love. That's where your self-esteem, your self-love, your self-worth comes from. the ability to say, I did this. Like, I'm proud of myself. What, do you think that that's your mom is still saying that she's proud of you? However, like, don't brag?
Nah. It's basically whatever you do, it's not enough. When you talk to a lot of Asians, like, there's one man that we all sort of like there's a meme about this guy. Okay, he's been in the military.
Yeah.
He's been he's a pilot. He's accomplished all these things, right? So your moms will never like tell you great things about you, okay? To you.
Yeah.
They might tell some other people, but to your face, they're always telling you, no, you're not good enough. You need to do more. It's like, really? Seriously? But I don't blame them because that's the way that they were brought up, right? I think the difference between you and I, like, we are that change. We are very different with our kids than our parents are. And culturally, I know that all the Chinese parents that are my age, we don't do to our kids what our parents did. Like, we reward our kids emotionally. We let them know, hey, we're proud of you. We don't make them feel like they're less than because they're not the number one in the world, for example.
But you pointed something out that I want to reiterate, that if we could really understand and we look back at our past generations of what they went through, of what they've gone through, right? Could you still consider that's see that?
I would like to, but
based on
I would love to, but no, I just don't. I think that their generation just don't know how to love the way that we expect them to love, or be able to communicate, because they were never taught that. So
we can't fault them because if they were never taught that. That's what I'm saying. We can't fault them for that if they were never taught that, right?
No, I don't fault it at all. I just recognize that, and that's the biggest thing in the Chinese culture, that for those of us who were not from the one-child rules, there's always going to be an extreme golden child, and then everyone else. So no matter, I could have been number one in Canada, U.S., and then went overseas and beat all the Chinese. That still wouldn't be enough, that's just the way it is. It's just, and that is the reason why a lot of Asian men, they don't talk about this, but when Asian men commit suicide, with the exception of the Japanese who have a ritual, okay, like in China, like, they would never admit that someone committed suicide or anything like that because of depression or because they've been ostracized or because they've been suffering from mental health. It's just buried, and I love the fact that you've given a platform for me to talk about it and to maybe be an example to other Chinese men my age who, I'm 49.
For sure.
So as a 49-year-old man with other Chinese, like, don't limit yourself to the way that your parents raised you. Like, change, make a difference, so that they're like, I'm willing to be that example. Like, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I've done this, like, in the dad's group that we connected. At least once a month, someone reaches out to me and say, hey, how are you so positive? And I said, if you don't feed yourself some positivity and surround yourself with positive people like yourself, you're just going to get negative, and it's going to get bad. And so that's how I've learned to thrive, and that's how I've dealt with any mental, like, issues that is just not talked about. And I go to therapy. I make sure that I'm open about it, because it takes the first person, right? And I mean, a dozen years ago, Jeremy Lin let Asian people know it's okay to be good in sports, right? Prior to that, you couldn't be good at Asian sport. Like, you couldn't be good at sports unless it was like ping pong, like, or like you did extreme violin or something, or piano. Like, there's no like opening for that. So if I can be like the first domino in that, or be one of the dominoes in that to tip over, and that Chinese man, look, it's okay. Talk about your mental health. Go find someone. Go find a friend like Mr. Dozier here, who I communicate with you on a regular basis still, and it's been 4.5 years since we first met. So
and man, thank you, Andy, for tonight, man, for sharing, your perspective and just how you grew up, and letting other people know, again, we're not different. We all have the same concerns, the same worries, the same cares, the same type of circumstances. We just respond to them differently based on how our environment taught us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I really want us as the adults now to go look back at your parents and your grandparents, because there might be a space of a level of forgiveness that you can give them, and let them know, hey, you know what, my life turned out, I appreciate what you did, mom and dad, and my life turned out, because maybe that's all they need to hear, so that they could be at peace with how they raised you, because who knows what they're carrying, right, in their life of what they went through. And that's something that I learned in my own growth, was I had to go back, and I went to my parents for forgiveness. I went to people to ask for forgiveness, because I saw my behavior. And unfortunately, sometimes, as you said, we suffer in silence for many years and don't really understand where it's coming from, or why we behave the way that we behave, until we actually are willing to do that work and discover, like, oh, shoot, like, I'm not good enough. I'm not worth it. I'm not this. I'm not, like, all those. If we tell the truth, we all deal with some type of a I'm not. If we tell the truth, and if you look at where that I'm not came from, you may be able to unravel some of that anxiety and depression and upset and frustration, because you realize that that's not, it wasn't the truth, and it's not the truth. It was our perception that gives us that meaning sometimes. Last words, Andy.
Last words. I focus on what I want, not what I don't want. So when you say I'm not, I start to list all the things I am. So instead of trying to avoid drama, I seek peace. It's technically the same thing. Avoiding drama sounds like, hey, you don't want drama in your life, but you actually get more of it. So I seek peace. I seek mental well-being. I seek good friends. And I hope one day that you and I can share a drink or beverage of choice in person, and
hey, I need to come to Canada anyway, so we'll talk about that. I accept the invitation.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Andy, man, always pleasure talking to you and seeing you, man. I appreciate you so much for your time tonight.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the invite. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Okay. All right, this is the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streaming from the KCAA Radio.com website, MBR radio platforms, on Roku. Tonight's our first night on Roku, so if you got the Roku device, you can log in, download the app for MBR radio, and watch us on Roku TV. Again, this is so important for me, because my own life, my own work that I had to do, even at 54, still peeling off layers of the I'm not worth it and I'm not good enough. And you could be accomplishing all these great goals and accomplishing all these great things in life, but that little voice in your head sometimes still tries to remind you that, hey, you know what, but you didn't do this, or you didn't do that, and guess what, you're not worth it. You're still not good enough. Who wants to do this for you? Nobody wants to do that for you. Like, that's the self-talk that we have sometimes, if we tell the truth, that when your mouth is closed and that voice that you hear chatting and giving you your opinions and cynicism and all these kind of criticisms to yourself, about yourself or about others, that voice is not you. That's not you. You are the one observing that voice, listening to that voice. That's your subconscious mind does that. It's designed to, and it thinks it's helping us when it's not. In some cases, it's holding us back. Most important, your spirituality, your therapy, and if you find some type of philosophy. I found a philosophy of a personal development course. I found my ideology under the cognitive behavior courses, and of course my spirituality, believing in Jesus Christ and God and the Holy Spirit. Like, so, and because I believe I'm a spiritual being and I believe in Jesus, then my spirit, I had to put it in a different order. Some people say soul, mind, and body, things like that. I learned for myself, it's my spirit, my soul, and my body, and my spirit leads my life. Your spirit wants one that wants to live life and have fun and be free. When your mind tries to protect you, your soul is trying to keep you safe and protect you. And if you deal with that out of order, then then you experience the anxiety in your body and all the stuff that goes with anxiety and those body sensations. But I had to do the work. But I had to be willing to look at that first and tell the truth to myself before I told the truth to anybody. All right. So this is our PSA. This is Call Me Go. Make sure you check this out. It is dedicated for veterans. However, again, stress, anxiety, panic attacks, that's a human being flaw. It's a human being flaw. But if this device, you're interested, you can check it out. But if you have veterans in your life, make sure you share this with them. Some of us don't want to take medication. And so we had to find other ways to stay alive.
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Calm Go. Calm Go is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes in moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Calm Go decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit calmago.com to learn how you can get Calm Go through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
You're listening to the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM in the Inland Empire. Also streaming from the KCAARadar.com website, MBR Radio, TuneIn Radio, Pandora, Google Play, Blog Talk Radio, iHeartRadio, Podcast, Stitcher, Amazon Radio, just to list a few. Oh yeah, and the streaming videos are located at Tiki Live or Rumble under the Farron Dozier Show. Catch us live or catch us on the archives at the Farron Dozier Show. Shout us out, what's the count? Visit farrond.com for more information. All right, welcome back to the Farron Dozier Show. I want to give a shout out to MBR Radio. I had an interview on this platform about 2.5 years ago, probably, and had a great time, had a great experience with H. And, you know, I had wanted to bring my military talk show, Trench Talk. That's my original military show, Trench Talk, back. But I had so many different shows, and I'm like, how do I do that? How do I have like 5 shows going on? And I'm thankful for their patience. And the ability to, when I was ready to figure this out and bring this military talk show back, that they allowed me to still be a part of their network, embrace me with their open arms. So just make sure you go to MBR Radio, mbrradio.us to support us as veterans. They're giving veterans a voice. I listened to a show earlier today on the Roku TV, and the lady was mentioning how she got into this podcasting because it was helping her reconnect back to speaking and talking to people. And that made me think about when my dad passed away in 2019, how I was ready to shut down and just walk away from everything. Like I had just got to the point where my life was okay, dealt with my mental health, my depression, anxiety. I was kind of at a cruising level, and then my dad passed, and that just took me off for a second. And it made me think about how I lost even some of my own creativity and things that I've been trying to repair over these last 4 or 5 years now. And when she said that, it just made me think about how 14 years ago, I found Blog Talk Radio, and that helped me stay alive because I was living into that next episode. And so these platforms like this, you know, back then in 2006 and 4, you know, back then it wasn't podcasting. There was Blog Talk Radio and things like that. But that they have created this for us veterans to find our voice and share our voice. All right. So my next guest is here. Let's get Joey on deck. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm glad to finally be on your show, man. I've been watching your stuff since I started on MBR, and I'm just happy to be here, man.
see your stuff too. So congratulations on your work.
Thank you, man. And thank
Do
you
me
for
a
putting
favor.
this together. This is
Yeah, yeah.
well, like no one else is doing this, at least as far as I'm seeing. So like it's really cool that you're, I listened to Andy and I was just like, I was nodding my head the whole time. I was like, yep, I've experienced that. Even though, we're different nationalities, I think there is a commonality of the Asian community, that there's a lot that we definitely struggle with as a general, I guess, race, if you want to. I mean, we're very broad, but yeah, we do
Yeah.
have some commonalities there.
So listening to Andy, what do you want to say about your background and being Japanese and white, right?
Yeah. So I'm a product of the military overseas assignment. My dad was stationed in Japan, and he met my mom over there, and here I am. This is my origin story. But
Yeah.
so yeah, my mom is Japanese and my dad is white. So I've kind of been I have a little bit even more of a unique I guess background story than Andy, but being biracial and being biracial Asian is kind of different. I'm kind of ambiguously Asian. A lot of people don't know what I am. They kind of play this game
Yeah.
with me, like they're like, they're guessing. They're like, you're Korean, right? And it's like a game to them, and I play along with it. But like most people never guess, which is fine, because like I do, I am vaguely Asian, or I jokingly say I'm ambiguously Asian. And it's funny though, because I've been to different Asian countries and I do kind of blend in. Like I was in when I was stationed in Korea. Koreans would start coming up to me and start speaking to me in full fluent Korean, assuming that I'm Korean. I went to the Philippines, same thing. I had Filipinos talking to me, in Tagalog. But the funny thing is in Japan, everyone knows I'm American. Like they don't speak to me in Japanese, so I never really fit in with Japan. I mean,
Yeah.
I do kind of fit in a little bit. I'm like an Americanized Japanese person. So, but yeah, I think what
So
resonated
how did
with
you deal with that? Yeah. Yeah. Go
well,
ahead.
I was
How did you
kind of a
deal with that?
chameleon in a lot of ways. I really
Mm.
found that I kind of blended in with my environment no matter where I was. So when I was with Asian people, I could kind of be the Asian guy or Asian-ish. But then when I was with,
Yeah.
my white friends, I could be more white. I was
Yeah.
passing, so I was kind of in between both audiences, and I never really had a true home, if you want to call it that. Until I
Yeah.
started meeting other biracial Asian people, which was really, there is a lot of people out there that are biracial Asian. So I
Yeah.
definitely have my people out there, but yeah, it was definitely tough growing up for sure, because I was always on the line of like, okay, I'm not white, I'm not Asian. Well, you know what I mean? So it was definitely
Yeah, for
challenging for
sure.
sure. Until I like Andy, until I was in my 30s almost. Well, that's when I really started to kind of like accept myself and just be like, you know what, I'm just me. I am Asian, but I'm also white. And it's just kind of it's part of my identity.
Those we know that those teenage years again are the most vulnerable ages because you're looking for that identity. You're looking for it
Yes.
in sports or some kind of club or some gang or whatever that to be connected to. For you, how did you deal with that in those early stages of your teenage years?
um well, I probably was a bit of a loner, in the teenage years. Kind of kept to myself. I was painfully shy for a long time. But I kind of, as I got into high school, I started to kind of find my way. But growing up in the military brat, I was around a lot of diversity. But then when my
Mhm.
dad retired, we retired. He retired, and we went to Mississippi, a small
Oh
town
wow.
in northeast Mississippi, literally like a week before my freshman year of high school, in a small town
Oh,
called Corinth, Mississippi. And
oh
and I didn't know a soul. And me and my brother were the only Asian people in the entire school. And some
wow.
of these people had, I mean, they're plenty nice people, but there were some very uninformed and uneducated people, because they
For sure.
literally have never met an Asian person we were the first representations of the Asian population, which was really crazy in a lot of ways. But yeah, we just kind of, I think one thing that I've noticed about some Asian Americans is we tend to, like, I guess you can call it code switch, where we're adaptable. I at least I see a lot of assimilation or an expectation to assimilate into the mass society of cultural, but yeah, so it's definitely challenging sometimes, because you want to stick to your roots and be honest with your roots, but then like you kind of have to take some of the lumps. You have to take some of the Asian jokes. Like, I was writing down all the different references of like any popular Asian person in media at the time. I'll go back to the movie Hook. You remember that movie Hook, when Rufio was really big, like the Asian guy with the red hair? When Rufio was there, man, I got called Rufio so many times, is not even a joke. But I kind of took it as like, okay, they're, I just kind of accepted it. I didn't like take offense to it necessarily, but yeah, there were times where I guess I did. It was a little hurtful because, it's like, okay, you just see an Asian person and then you just associate them, like Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, Jet Li, all the Asians that are popular. They think it's almost like a compliment to be compared to them, but it's like, I don't look anything like Jackie Chan or Jet Li, so I don't know why you're calling me that,
And that's why I was saying with that level of objectification, when we label people and then we talk to people like the world talks about those people, and it's mixed with compliments and derogatory statements and all levels of what that looks like, right? But mostly it seems to be that negative context, because a lot of times people don't realize what they say is could be hurtful, because they don't because you don't see yourself like that. But then we talk to you, or we talk about you in that instance, then what does that do? It just keeps us disconnected from one another as people, man. And so I appreciate you for saying that. What triggered in your 30s to look at your past and be like, you know what, I'm done? For me, I was 39 and I was like, you know what, I was ready to take my life. Life was over. I'm like, you know what, I just heard this voice in my head. There's got to be something better than this, man. Like, that's what I heard myself. What had you in your turning point say, you know what, I'm done with this kind of?
Yeah, I think a little bit was, just having that a little bit more self-confidence and self-assurance, and just being like, okay, I'm in this space. I am who I am. I don't have to be Japanese. I don't have to be white. I am, those two races in one. And so, yeah, it just took a little bit of time and just self-reflection, and also meeting other people like me, like other mixed race, Asian, biracial people, just meeting more Asian people in general. Like, when I was in the military, like, it was the United Nations everywhere I went. There's representatives from all countries, so I loved that about the military. And I think it really did kind of give me gave me the space of like, oh, okay, yeah, I have a really good friend who's Chinese, born in China and then came to America and is now in the U.S. Air Force. And I'd never really met a Chinese person before, and so I was learning from him, like different things about Chinese culture, and I had my own misunderstandings and/or So I'm just like, hey, I got to learn, from everyone, so that's kind of what it was, an education thing that just took some time for me.
Joey, man, thank you for hanging out with me, man. I really appreciate you. Shouts out to NBR for this platform, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you having me. Thank you for putting this on, and all the mental health stuff that you put forth, is a great service. I think we need to be having these conversations about mental health, all races. But I love that you're putting a spotlight on different racial groups. And I'm a mental health professional. I'm a licensed social worker, and I don't see a lot of Asians, coming to get mental health services. So we need to change that.
Right.
So that I'm here to
Exactly.
advocate for that, and I love that you're putting this on. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate you so much, man. Thank you for hanging out.
Yeah, of course.
All right. This is the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio. We're going to go right into my next guest because he's here. Rio, what's up, man?
What's up? Thank you for having me on. Sorry, I just got out of work, so I pulled over.
You
here,
good? Hey,
super excited to
good.
be on.
This is what happens when it's live. You expect anything is possible when it's live. So you're good, man. Thank you.
You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Do me a favor, introduce yourself and give me a little bit of background.
Yeah, my name's Michael Riotica. I go by Rio. I work in sports here in LA, X versus X sports. So I help out with the community, bringing basketball camps, leagues, everything basketball. And also I work in healthcare right now. So as a business development executive, helping out getting nurses to facilities. And a little background about me, I actually was born here in West Covina, but grew up in a small town in Cordova, Alaska. So I grew up in Alaska, working in seafood till about, I think, late 20s until I transitioned down here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And your descent is Filipino, so you're a Filipino.
Full Filipino, proud.
Yeah. I appreciate you for the sports piece because as military veterans, we're no different than the athletes who are veterans. A lot of times that identity is trapped in that uniform, whether it's a camouflage or a basketball or a football or a soccer. And again, for us, it goes back to those early ages and that transition of elementary to middle school, where you're now pretty much not talking to your parents as much anymore because they've disappointed you or they don't understand you no more. So now we go to our peers for this love and acceptance. What do you want to speak to about that you see in the athletic world, and how we can maybe start to alter some of that behavior?
Yeah, so even with that, and we're hitting on mental health. Growing up, especially in the Filipino culture, I was speaking to my mom about it. It just where they grew up, there's no healthcare system, right? There was no way to if you didn't have the money, you couldn't see anyone. So a lot of it was they'll tell you to go to church. Your priest would be the one helping you, or some of the elders. But the biggest thing for me was the sports. I believe for me growing up, I had a lot of pent up things because I didn't know who to share it with. And it was like, you can't think about it or else that's who you are. You can't be sad. You got to think happy, right? Well, in the gym, when you're alone there or with your teammates, you have that focus, right? And it helped me stay out of trouble. And I think that's the big thing about it, right? What you can do in there to improve and challenge yourself that prepares you for life. It did end up becoming my therapy, right? Of course, you should see somebody professionally, but when you don't know where to go and you got that basketball, like everything could be bad, but even just the game of basketball, that's always going to be there. I could always have that basketball.
Always.
The basketball is not going to let me down. It's going to be with me when I'm alone. So speaking of mental health, I think it's so crucial, like in the development of kids, to understand that, because you win and you lose, but how do you bounce back? How do you deal with it mentally?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So for me, I use the game of sports to inspire kids. Like we do a camp for kids up in my hometown. We did it for the second year, but it's one of those things when you have nothing around you, right? Having those solid youth programs, I mean, it just shows the development of the community, how much impact it has. Kids stay out of trouble. Kids are focused and motivated. You start seeing them doing better in school. It's a snowball effect because it's a privilege to step on that court, right? And you work so hard for it. And when it's something you earn for, after even high school and I played sports, I'm ready for it, right? Any challenge is like, you know what? I got up at 5 a.m. I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. just in the business world. But I was able to have systems in place to where it could transfer anywhere just because of the discipline that we had within sports, and also knowing like, hey, if it's a team thing, like a business organization, right? You understand a team concept. And that's the other thing that's big about sports is you're not afraid to reach out and communicate, right? So that's what I believe. Sports is just so big, like so important.
You know, again, thank you for sharing that, because again, when we look at that athletic ability, I have this conversation that I'm bringing to the table, that a lot of coaches say there's no I in team. There's no I in team, right? We hear that, but I say there is an I in team. And that I in team is the interpersonal relationship of that athlete. Because if I'm dealing with my life from home and my environment and circumstances, and it's exhausting and I'm emotionally drained, how can I give myself to the team completely when I'm worried about what am I going to eat for dinner, when I'm worried about my parents are fighting and they're going through a divorce, or my grandmother dies and I can't deal with that emotion because I got to go play this championship game and I got to be ready, and I haven't dealt with those emotional stressors in my life. But also I'm dealing with, I'm not good enough, I'm not worth it, I don't belong, I'm on my own. And then you want to be this athlete, but then what happens when that's done and that uniform comes off at whatever level? If you make it to college, if you make it to professional, and that's done, then who are you? You got to go back and deal with all that stuff that you suppressed in your mind?
Yeah.
Nah.
I heard
not
this
today.
Fraud. Yeah, I heard this, Fraud, and it was a transition that I did, like even out of high school, right? Played a little bit of college, but I almost had to unbecome what I was to become who I was going to be. So a lot of those things I tied onto that status of being, oh, in high school, I'm this and I'm that. But then when I'm out there, right, after that, you really don't know where to go, because that was where all your focus is. But the biggest thing that helped me was having a coach that actually cared, that told me, hey, I'm not getting mad at you for not touching the line at basketball. It's because it's bigger than this. What are you going to do at work? You're going to show up late. What are you going to do? You're not going to do as hard. And he hit me on that since my freshman year to my sophomore year, and he was tough on me. And he said, you're going to go through mental warfare, but this is going to prepare you for life. So that's another thing I want to give a shout out to my coach, Jason Berger. He would even have me over for dinner every single night, 5 p.m., make sure I eat right. And that went on for three years of my high school career. And he took that on. He's like my best friend. I love all his kids, but it's one of those that, like, you have that one person that believes in you even when you feel so alone. It makes such a difference in the world. Like, I'm willing to run through a brick for this person, right? As a coach, as a friend, as a family. So for me, it was like, no one else had to believe in me but the guy that was leading the charge. If he believed in me and put in the effort and cared, I felt like I won. So that was another thing from that aspect, was like, I had someone that believed in me at a young age. So
we got about 45 seconds for you left. What do you want to say to your culture around mental toughness?
Yeah, so for me, it's definitely, if you need to talk to someone, right? Because that's something I'm starting to learn more about. But the big thing is, like, you're enough. Know your value. You know, talk to the ones you love. They'll tell you that. A lot of times it's a lot of 99% of it is like us just tearing ourselves down.
Exactly.
But if you ask someone you love, right, some of your friends, ask them a question. Why am I your friend? Have we ever asked our friends that? Like, why do you value our friendship? And I asked my friend that. It's like, you're dependable. And I never saw that in myself. So looking at it from another perspective, it's actually not that bad. But mentally, I overthink things sometimes. Be like, I'm worse than this, I'm worse than that, until I hear from somebody like, oh, you're actually good. And then you're like, you start to believe it and work on it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like, just know your value. Talk to the ones you love. Keep your circle small, but have those people where you could go back to when you're having that and be like, hey, how are you doing? Or even just spending time with them. You'll realize how blessed you are. So
thank you for your time hanging out, man, after work, man. I really appreciate you. I look forward to communicating with you and altering the lives of these athletes, man. I appreciate you so much.
No, thank you for having me on, and you guys have a wonderful night. And I have the World Peace Classic tomorrow if anyone's in the area. But yeah, we have a golf event, so I'll see you around.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye. All right, this is the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio 106.5 FM, Tiffany AM. Roku tonight, first episode on Roku. Make sure you check us out. I'm out of here. Shout us out, what's the count? FarronD.com for more information.
Do you remember studying sickle cell in biology class?
What's the Count on Sickle Cell Trait Prevention is here to bring you awareness, education, and prevention conversations around the risk factors of this inherited gene. Visit WDCONSCT.org.
KCAA. Eat bread, lose weight. That's right. Eat bread, lose weight.